It was from 2012.
Let's come to order. Board Sounds 2020 SUWR 454, State versus Victor Sean Boatright. Stay ready.
Yes, Your Honor, yes, sir.
Mr. Hughes, Mr. Rose, been ready. Yes. Who will be the counsel? Mr. Boatright.
I will be.
Mr. Boatright is, let the record show Mr. Boatright is here actually. Call you first.
Yes,
You can sound the case on the numbers and so forth.
Yes, Your Honor, this is the matter of the State versus Victor Boatright. He is before the court on 2 felony warrants, 2020-1796, charges Mr. Boatright with the offense of felony murder. Warrant 2020-1797 charges him with the offense of aggravated assault. We are here today for the purpose of a preliminary and bond hearing. We have one witness to call, and be Detective Cross.
Cross, please stand, raise your right hand, and swear firm testimony that in this matter that you will faithfully and justly serve God. Please answer any questions of attorney.
You please state your name for the record.
Justin Cross,
And how are you employed?
with the state office as well,
And in what capacity?
as a detective.
And are you post certified?
Yes, ma'am,
And were you employed as a detective back on August 22nd of this year?
I was.
And were you the individual who took out the warrants that were previously examined?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the court how you came to take those warrants out?
Yes, ma'am. So on August the 22nd this year at 01:45 hours, Statesboro Police Department responded to smoke grade, Cowboys parking lot in reference to a subject who had been shot and claimed. Upon arrival, officers attempted to treat the victim, Mr. Philip Wright. EMS arrived shortly after and transported him to the hospital. At about 2:06 in the morning, I get a phone call from Statesboro Police Dispatch saying that there had been a person shot and that I needed to respond.
Okay, and where did you first respond?
I first responded to the East Shore Regional Medical Center emergency.
Okay, and what did you learn when you responded?
When I got there, I was met by a deputy, Bullitt County Deputy Schaefer was in the emergency room, and he advised me that Mr. Wright had been declared deceased.
All right. And what else did you do while you were at the hospital?
While I was at the hospital, Deputy Schaefer handed me Mr. Wright's cell phone and his identification. And he also advised that there was 2 projectiles, one underneath Mr. Wright's body and one, on a stretcher that he was brought in. And he pointed them both out to me. I collected them, or photographed them both, collected them as evidence.
Did you, go to observe, the deceased?
Yes, yes.
And what did you observe?
Mr. Wright was in a room, in the emergency room, and, he was, covered in blood, and his, most of his clothing had been removed. There had been some attempted treatment of him in the emergency room. There was various IV tubes in his body, and I also observed that he had multiple apparent gunshot wounds.
All right. Could you see where those gunshot wounds were on his body?
Yes, ma'am. He had gunshot wounds from his head to his, just above his feet. One in the center of his head, just below his hairline. There appeared to be a hole or a gunshot wound to his ear, one in his throat, several in his chest, abdomen area, and on one of his legs.
And, was he transported to the GBI crime lab for an autopsy?
Yes, ma'am. The coroner, Mr. Clutch, arrived shortly after I did and took possession.
All right. Were you able to attend that autopsy?
No, ma'am, I was not. Due to COVID, we're not able to go to the crime lab.
Where did you, respond to after you went to the hospital?
After the hospital, I went to the crime scene, the Cowboys parking lot. The officers on scene had already established a crime scene, yellow tape, patrol cars, and officers standing in sentries in the crime scene to preserve it.
All right. Were you able to identify any witnesses to the shooting?
Yes, ma'am. Still at the scene, upon my arrival, there were several witnesses. Said they agreed to meet me at the police department and start explaining exactly what they had seen.
All right. Who did you talk with?
I spoke with Kyle Cherry, Jessica Coleman.
You can spell the names for the board.
Sure. Kyle is Kyle, and Cherry is Cherry. Jessica Coleman, Coleman. Shamika Scott, Shymeka Scott. And several others.
In speaking with these witnesses, were you able to determine what happened that evening?
Yes, ma'am, they were able to paint a fairly clear picture of what happened.
And what did you learn?
We'll start with Mr. Cherry. Mr. Cherry stated that he had been at the club or at the pool hall, Cowboys. And as the club had let out, he was in the parking lot, and he was talking to his female. He said that a guy took offense to him talking to a female and started having words with him. He said at some point during this verbal altercation, the offender, the guy who was having this verbal altercation with him, pulled out a gun and actually pointed it at his head. Mr. Cherry said that he spun away from him and then came back up to him and started having an altercation, a verbal altercation with him again. At this point, the offender pointed a gun at him and he said, shoot me, you're gonna shoot me, do it. And he said at that point, a female came and grabbed the offender and took him away to a car, took him to a car.
Now, at that point, that was just an altercation between the defendant and Mr. Cherry.
Correct.
Where was the deceased at this time?
The deceased was about approximately 150 feet away in the parking lot, standing in the parking lot to the north of where this altercation was happening.
Were you able to determine whether or not he was involved with his initial altercation between the defendant and Mr. Cherry?
He had no involvement whatsoever in the initial verbal altercation.
Were you able to identify one of the females that Mr. Cherry was talking with when he indicated that the defendant approached him with a gun, or the defendant approached him upset?
Yes, ma'am, I was able to speak with, Jessica Coleman. Ms. Coleman, she stated that, she was right at Mr. Boatwright. She actually identifies the offender. She's the first one to identify the offender as, Victor Boatwright. She knows Victor Boatwright from school, from her cousin, and going to school and living in Twin City together, and known each other for years. She knew what kind of vehicle he had. And she said this, her evening started, her interaction with Boatwright started earlier in the evening. She had some food in her car, and she had offered it to Boatwright, or Boatwright offered to pay her some money to get this plate of food she had in her car. So he ate the food, and then she said she had to walk back to Mr. Boatwright's car to get the money from him for this food. It was going to pay her. And while they were at the car, he had taken off his clothes, and she thought it was fun. He had shorts and t-shirt on under, but he had taken off his, what he called his club clothes. And she said she found that kind of comical, and so she actually filmed a very small Snapchat video, a short Snapchat video, because she thought it was funny what he was doing, and it was just kind of joking. And it was about that time that Kyle Cherry had come and walked up, and the verbal altercation started.
Okay, and what did she tell you happened with that verbal altercation?
She said that during this altercation, she saw Victor pull out a gun, and she tells him she's trying to confuse the situation. She said, "No, it's not anything that serious." And she tells another female, Demonica Sheffield, to come get your cousin. She knew that Demonica Sheffield was Victor Boatwright's cousin, and she tells Miss Sheffield, "Hey, you need to come to help review this situation."
Did she tell you where you indicated that she saw the defendant pull a gun? Did she tell you what she did when he pulled that gun?
In the initial altercation between Sherry and Mr. Boatwright, I don't recall where she said he did it.
All right. Were you able to determine whether or not this Miss Sheffield came and got the defendant at this time?
Yes, ma'am. According to Miss Coleman, Miss Sheffield comes over, puts him in a headlock, pushes him over to the passenger side of his vehicle, puts him in his vehicle, and then shuts the door.
Were you able to speak with Miss Sheffield?
Yes, ma'am. At a later time, not in the initial interviews at the police department, but after we conducted those initial interviews, we went to Miss Sheffield's residence in Portal and spoke with her.
Okay, and what did she tell you?
So, on the same morning at 8:19 hours, Captain Hankins and I actually went to her residence in Portal. And first we showed her a photograph lineup to make sure that we were talking about the same person. And she said it was actually her cousin. She knows him very well. Picked him out of the lineup right away and said that she was sure that it was Mr. Boatwright that was the one that shot Mr. Wright. She had seen the whole incident. She said that she saw Victor with a gun, and that she had tried to push him and get him in the car and defuse the situation. She said that she thought that she didn't want him to do anything stupid, so she was trying to get him in the car with his gun and get him to leave.
Did she indicate whether or not she was successful in getting him in the car?
Yes, ma'am. Initially she was.
Okay, what did she say?
She said that she had gotten him into the car, but she said that after she was successful getting him in the car, that Victor got right back out of the car.
Now, you indicated that there were several females. Did you speak with any other females that evening who witnessed this altercation?
Yes, ma'am. So Miss Rakeisha Harris, we spoke with her at the State Police Department as well. Sure. It's Rikeisha Harris.
And what did you learn from Ms. Harris when you spoke with her?
So Ms. Harris had been standing in the general area where Kyle Cherry was at. She said that for the initial confrontation, the initial altercation, she said that this guy had pulled out a gun and was pointing it at Kyle. And she said that, it was heated there for a short time. He was pointing his gun at him, and Kyle was saying, "Shoot me." And she said that some people kind of helped diffuse that situation. And she said that as soon as the situation was diffused, her cousin, who is Mr. Wright, came walking up, and he stated, "What's going on? Why did he pull out a gun?" And she said it was at that very moment that Mr. Boatwright jumped out of the car and just began shooting Mr. Wright.
Okay. You indicated that early on when you spoke with Ms. Coleman, that she had filmed a Snapchat video of the defendant. Were you able to retrieve that Snapchat video?
No, ma'am. So we went back and looked, and the video has been deleted from our phone. It was not, we weren't able to retrieve it. She said that she did tell me that the video did not contain any of the altercation. It was prior to the altercation. She said it was less than a 30-second clip, and that was of Mr. Butterwright taking his loaded altercation charges.
Were you able to find any video that portrayed this altercation?
Yes, ma'am. So there was actually 3 separate videos of the incident. One video was taken from a Shanika Scott, Shyemeka. Ms. Scott came to the police department and she provided the video to us. She had been filming in the parking lot for about 30 to 45 minutes before the shooting. She was actually in the club. She captured everybody involved in this incident on the video in the club prior to the shooting, and up to the shooting, she captured video on her phone of Mr. Wright standing in the parking lot about 150 feet away before the altercation occurred. And then her video had audio with it as well. And from the audio, I was able to hear 11 gunshots being fired.
Based upon, were you all able to find any shell casings or projectiles when the scene was searched?
Yes, ma'am. So, Detective Holloway actually responded to the scene, and it was turned over to him as the crime scene technician. And he collected 12 separate 9mm shell casings in close proximity to where we suspect the shooting happened.
Okay. Have those been turned over to the crime lab?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you indicated, was there anything else of importance in the video that you were able to obtain from Ms. Scott?
So there are several, I noted several things on the video. From the video does not have a timestamp on it. So using GOM media player, the timer on the actual player, I was able to identify Victor Bogart, Kyle Cherry, Kenneth Peacock, and LaPhilip Wright all in this video. It helped me to determine who was wearing what. She was actually close enough to identify faces in this video prior to the shooting. So I was able to identify people by their clothing description, and then later on match that with a second video that was captured to see who was actually the actors in this other video that was captured the incident.
And what was that other video?
The other video was from a Georgia Power pole camera. Georgia Power has installed a pole camera at the corner of Lanier Drive and Channel Road, and the camera actually faces back towards Cowboys Smoke Break parking lot. And Mr. Boatwright's vehicle and when the incident occurred was almost centered perfectly in the middle of the vehicle.
Okay. And what did you learn by viewing this video?
So in this video, and to note, in this video doesn't have a timestamp either, so using the timestamp from GOM media player. It appears that there is some type of course, there's no audio with this video, but I was able to pair it with Ms. Scott's video to match up exactly how this happened. But it appears in the video that you see some type of Boatwright talking to Cherry, and there's some type of conversation back and forth. Shortly after, you see after Mr. Cherry has walked away, you see Mr. Wright actually come into the scene on the video. He's about 150 feet north of this altercation. He comes walking up, or is walking towards it, and by the time he's walking up, I see Miss Monica Sheffield has put Mr. Boatwright into his vehicle. And by the time Mr. Wright gets to the car, Mr. Boatwright has already exited his vehicle, and is in very quick fashion. He's running around the back of his car towards Wright. And in the video, I can see Mr. Wright duck down. He's ducking away, and Boatwright is pointing. You can actually see the pistol in the video. Him pointing the pistol at Mr. Wright and shooting as Mr. Wright is going to the ground and laying on the ground. He's shooting at downward motion.
During your investigation and speaking with the witnesses, was there any indication that there had been any type of prior altercation between the defendant and Philip prior to the shooting?
No, ma'am, there was nobody, these two separate parties didn't know each other, as far as I can tell. I wrote search warrants for the victim's phone and the offender's phone, downloaded both of their phones. There's no communication between anybody in either of those two groups that know each other prior to the altercation occurring. None of the witnesses from Mr. Wright's family or from Mr. Wright's friends and family that were on scene indicated they knew Mr. Boatwright. And the same with Jessica Coleman and Monica Sheffield, they didn't know Mr. Wright's family either.
Now, was the defendant on the scene when law enforcement first arrived?
No, ma'am, he was not.
And what did you learn about his whereabouts and what happened immediately after the shooting?
So after the shooting, after he was identified by Miss Sheffield and Miss Coleman, I obtained a warrant, and also after reviewing I was able to get a clip from the Georgia Power video and use the Georgia Power video to show the shooting clearly. I obtained a warrant for Mr. Boatwright, and we started at his last known address, which is his mom's address in Twin City. Detective Beckins and I and Monroe County Deputy went with us to Twin City to this address, and when we arrived, his mom, Miss Denise Jackson, she said she knew the reason we were there. She said the reason we were there was because her son was involved in a shooting. And she provided us with a phone number for Mr. Boatwright. Detective Beckins called Mr. Boatwright and said, hey, you need to come to your mom's house and turn each other.
All right. And did he hurt himself then?
Yes, after he was contacted, he did come to himself.
All right. Now, were you able to speak with the defendant after he turned himself in?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
All right.
So,
did you go over Miranda with him?
yes, ma'am. So,
Did he voluntarily agree to talk with you?
he did.
What did you learn from your interview with him?
On the 22nd at 1300 hours, I spoke with him at the State Police Department, read him his Miranda rights. The interview is audio video recorded in the case file. Mr. Boatwright said he mirrors what Jessica Coleman said. He said he had gone to his car. They've been to the club. There's nothing out of the ordinary, nothing unusual happened until he gets to his car, and this guy comes up to his car. He had taken his club clothes off and was talking with Jessica, and he mentions this video as well for filming a video. And he said that his cousin, Keith Sapp, was in the car, either asleep or maybe highly intoxicated in the car in the passenger seat.
Can you spell that name?
Sure. Rakeith Sapp.
All right.
S-A-P-P Sapp. He was in the car, but he didn't really know what was going on. He may have been intoxicated at the time. And he said that this guy, who was later identified as Scott Sherry, comes up and starts looking in his car, like, and he's like, what are you doing looking in my car? And they start having an altercation. He admits that, they did exchange some words, and then he gets his gun. And he said that after the altercation kind of broke up, he says this is when this other guy, who we learned was Mr. Wright, comes walking up. And Mr. Boatwright said that the guy, Mr. Wright, he walks up and he says something, And then he like reaches, maybe like grabs his shirt, and he says, "I just reacted and shot."
Were you able to determine from your
Did he
investigation?
say what he said he said, Mr. Wright said?
No, sir, he didn't.
Were you able to determine from your investigation, whether or not there were any other weapons involved with the shooting?
No, there were no other, there were weapons found in another car, but nothing that we could say was linked to the shooting. Mr. Wright did not have a firearm on his person. Mr. Cherry, said in his testimony that Mr. Wright is not known to carry a gun. He's never carried a gun that he's known about, and there was no other gun involved in the altercation.
All right. Did the defendant say anything else to you, during this interview?
I had to go back through the interview again to see about how far apart they were, and he said he was about 6 to 8 feet away from the victim when he shot him. He said he didn't see the guy's reaction. He said that as soon as, his exact quote was, "As soon as I pulled it, I shot him." No words were exchanged.
Have you been able to, find the gun that was used?
No, we have not. Mr. Boatwright told us where he thought he tossed the gun out at on Highway 121 in Jenkins County. We conducted a thorough search of that area, but had not found the firearm.
Were you able to find any evidence pertaining to the defendant owning the gun?
Yes, ma'am. So he actually told us where he had purchased the gun at a Quick Shop in Swainsboro, Georgia. Quick Shop in Swainsboro confirmed that he did purchase that firearm, or purchase a firearm as he described, so Ruger 9mm pistol, or Ruger American 9mm. The pawn shop was actually able to provide us with the 4473, or the form that you fill out when you purchase the firearm, which has Mr. Boatwright's information and signature, and also has the serial number for the pistol.
All right. Do you see Mr. Boatwright in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is he located?
He's located to the, will be my right.
All right. And the Smoke Haven Cowboys parking lot, what county was that located in? Now, immediately after the shooting, what were the defendant's exact movements according to testimony or video?
So directly after the shooting, Mr. Boatwright gets into his vehicle. He goes back to the passenger side of his vehicle very briefly. Then he runs around, gets in the driver's side of his vehicle. He pulls to the end of the parking lot, which is a dead end, and then turns around. And as he's exiting the parking lot, he actually runs over Mr. Wright's car.
Right. Now, were you able to determine what vehicle he was in?
Yes, ma'am.
And
It's a silver Chevy Equinox. It actually belongs to his mother, Ms. Denise Jackson. Watching the video initially before we were able to find this vehicle, I found that on May the 8th of this year, Mr. Boatwright had been stopped for a stop sign violation, traffic stop, and the vehicle's tag, PZU 8182, was run by the officer that made the traffic stop, and Mr. Boatwright was driving the vehicle at the time. There's body camera footage of him in the vehicle at the time of the traffic stop.
all right. And were you able to search that vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you do a search warrant consent?
No, ma'am. Incident to Mr. Boatwright's arrest, we spoke with Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson says she is the owner of the vehicle. She allows Mr. Boatwright to drive it, but it's her vehicle, and it was parked in her yard at the time. She wished it to remain in her yard and gave us consent to search it, and actually signed a consent to search form, which is included in the case law.
Did you find any evidence in that car pertaining to the shooting?
There was a 9mm, a magazine to a Ruger American 9mm pistol. It had, I believe it had 12 rounds in that magazine, 11 or 12 rounds in the magazine. And then 2 cell phones, one of which is not a working cell phone, and the other is, I believe, Mr. Boatwright's cell phone. Is an Apple iPhone.
Right. And you indicated previously that you've already run a download. Was that done pursuant to a search warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
And was there anything of significance that you observed when the defendant turned himself in?
When Mr. Buckwright turned himself in, when we were at the police department interviewing him when he stood up, I noticed what appeared to be, blood spatter on his shirt, on the right side of his shirt and the back of his shirt. It's consistent with blood, it's red, it's a dry, red, blood-looking, substance on his shirt.
Was the, or disclosed seized?
Yes, ma'am.
I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Good morning, Detective Cross. I'm Kendall Gross. I'm a lawyer over the matter. I don't think we've met before.
No,
Have, I don't remember. I want to run through a few things, make sure I heard them correctly. Okay. You talk a lot faster than I write. I think you indicated that there were 3 videos. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I heard you talk about 2 of those. One was taken by one of the witnesses. One was a Georgia Power poll camera.
Yes, sir.
I didn't hear you say anything about the 3rd video.
I apologize. The 3rd video is, from Georgia Southern University. They have a video that, well, they have several videos in different angles, but one video captured an incident. It's hidden. I don't know where it's at. It's on a pole or on the wall or in a bush or something at Georgia Southern's entrance, to Paulson State.
Okay. About how far away is that camera from where this event took place?
I think that intersection is about 96 feet wide, and I think it's another probably 40 feet to the pole, and another probably 60 feet. So
Roughly 150.
yeah, 200 feet or so probably from it. Is what it looks like.
From that distance, I assume that there's no audio,
No, so there's no audio with that.
even if there was a track for it, it wouldn't pick anything up.
That's right.
Did you view this 3rd video?
Yes, sir.
Tell us, what is it? What does it show?
It mirrors the 2nd video, the Georgia Power video, and the reason I bring the Georgia Power video up in detail is because it's a lot clearer. It depicts the scene clearly. The Georgia Southern video, you can see that there's some type of altercation in the parking lot. You can tell that something happens, and you can see that Mr. Boatwright drives away in a silver vehicle. But it's a lot grainier. You can't see that the incident clearly depicted.
All right, so this, tell us if you don't mind, I think you said this happened just after 1 o'clock in the morning.
Almost 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:45.
And of course it was dark then. Is there much light in this parking lot?
There is the parking lot's very well lit, and the intersection is very well lit. It's a high traffic area, so there's good lighting from the Parker's End Zone. The Smoke Crave and Cowboys have fairly good lighting, and then like I said, the intersection has good lighting, and Georgia Southern University has some lighting as well in that area.
The first video was taken by, the first one that you talked about was taken by Ms. Harris.
No, sir, the first video was taken by Shamika Scott.
Okay. All right. Does that video have an audio track?
Yes, sir, it does.
Can you hear any verbal exchange between my client and Mr. Wright before the shooting starts?
No, sir. Miss Scott, so she starts this video inside of Cowboys, and then when she comes out of Cowboys, she goes and sits in her car. And her and her friend are in the car, and they're listening to music and talking. So there's some music in the background, and I believe their windows are rolled up as well. So there's no audio of an altercation. And she turns the music off or turns it down, and indicates on the video that there may be something happening. And she actually, at the moment that the other person who's in the car with her rolls the window down, is when the shots are fired.
Why was you said she had 30 to 45 minutes worth of video in a club parking lot. What in the world's out?
She was on Facebook Live, and she was videoing herself and her friends at the club, just having a good time, I guess. She's making comments. She comments about people's clothing and makes comments about, oh, this guy looks really good, or oh, I would never, go home with this guy, or whatever. She's just making general comments, and then she's just talking. She's just giving commentary for what she's seeing in the parking lot.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Did she make any comment about my client?
No, she didn't.
What about the victim indicated Mr. Harris. Mr. Wright, rather.
No, or no, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The altercation, verbal altercation between, my client, and Mr. Cherry, was that over with by the time Mr. Wright came into the video picture?
Yes, sir, it was.
Could you tell where Mr. Cherry went from the video?
Yes, sir, Mr. Cherry, he walks, I'll make sure I say it right. So Mr. Cherry still is in the frame, but at more of a distance away than Mr. Wright is. So about 43 minutes and 36 seconds, is when Miss Sheffield comes running up to Mr. Boatwright and grabs him. And, a couple seconds later is when Boatwright actually holds his arm out towards Cherry, and, Lakeisha Harris, the other witness I mentioned earlier, she's backing away at this time, and Miss Coleman, Miss Sheffield grabs Boatwright at 43-42. So within about 8 seconds, you see that something's happening. He's pointing his hand out towards Mr. Cherry, and DeMonka Sheffield sees that something's going on, grabs him, takes him to the passenger side of his vehicle at 43-51, and then when you see Mr. Wright walk up, it's actually at about 43-40, so about 40 seconds later is when Mr. Wright comes walking up. Mr. Cherry still is in the scene, but at this point, Mr. Boatwright is in the passenger seat of the vehicle.
All right, so when you say he's still in the scene, you mean still in the picture?
He's still within the frame of camera, yes, sir, but he's not, they're not standing directly together.
So, just so I'm clear, when you say a scene, you mean the scene in the video, not the crime scene?
Correct, well, but he's still within the crime scene, what would have been the crime scene and within the frame of the camera.
When he held his arm out at Mr. Cherry, did you see what was in his hand?
No, sir, on that part of the video, I do not see what was in his hand, but he does show pointing motion towards Mr. Cherry, and the people in the video all reacted.
So it could have just been pointing his finger at him.
No, sir, well, that's why the witnesses also, I have the witness testimony that says that's not what happened.
All right, so the witnesses tell us that he had a gun in his hand, but the video does not clearly show that. All right. Now, at the time you interviewed all these witnesses, they had been in a club.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell whether any of them were intoxicated at the time you took steps from them?
Miss Sheffield and Miss, we didn't talk to Miss, Sheffield at the police department. It was a little later in the morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning, so 6 hours later. So she didn't have any odor of alcohol in the breath when we talked to her that time.
But she had time to sober up.
Yes, sir, she did. But Miss Coleman had not been drinking. She was not intoxicated, and she had not had anything to drink. I believe Mr. Cherry did have, he had the odor of alcohol in his breath, but his words weren't slurred, his eyes weren't bloodshot. He walked fine. He didn't seem to be intoxicated, but he did have the odor of alcohol in his breath.
How long after the shooting was it that you talked to Mr. Cherry?
Spoke with Mr. Cherry at 4:01 a.m. The shooting was at 1:45 and we spoke with him at 4.
And so about 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours later, it still smells like alcohol?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask him if he had, how much he had to drink that night?
No, sir, I didn't.
Did you ask him whether or not he ingested any other substances like marijuana, cocaine, or anything like that?
No, sir.
Didn't ask him?
No, sir.
He didn't volunteer, of course.
No, he didn't.
Were you able to ascertain whether or not Mr. Boatwright had been drinking at the club?
No, sir.
Did you ask any of those questions?
No, sir.
Now, when you look at these three videos, Mr. Boatwright tells you that Mr. Wright reaches under his shirt. Did he describe that to you? Just say, tell me what reaching under his shirt means to you.
Mr. Boatwright, I want to make sure I was clear in what you were asking. Mr. Boatwright did. He said that he thought that Wright had reached under his shirt or reached his shirt, meaning that he thought he had done.
Okay. Is there any evidence in any of the videos that you've seen that supports his belief?
No, sir.
Okay, you don't see him reach under his shirt or reach around his body as if he's trying to grab anything in any of the videos?
No, sir.
On the issue of intoxication, before I totally leave the subject, I'm certain that toxicology was performed on Mr. Wright.
Yes, sir.
You know the results of that?
No, sir. Still.
You found 12 shell casings, but you heard 11 shots?
Yes, sir. They're in very rapid succession, so I mean it would have been easy. I had to listen to the video 10 times at least to count that one.
So you're saying approximately 11 shots. It could have been more.
Yes, sir.
Could it have been less?
I know it was 11 shots.
Sure about at least 11?
Yes, sir.
Now, following the shooting, Mr. Wright is laying on the concrete.
Yes, sir.
Is his body obscured by any parked vehicles or the crowd or anything from any of the videos that you've seen?
Yes, sir. So initially, when he is shot, you see him go down, and as he goes down below the level of Mr. Boatwright's vehicle, he goes out of frame. But then as Mr. Boatwright pulls away, you can see Mr. Wright on the ground.
All right. So after Mr. Boatwright moves his car, from that point forward in the video, you got an uninterrupted view of Mr. Wright.
Yes, sir.
All right. Was there a crowd that gathered around Mr. Wright's?
There was maybe 2 or 3. Miss Harris jumped on top of him. I don't know if she's trying to perform some type of life-saving mechanisms or not, but she jumped on top of him, and you can tell she's upset. Mr. Cherry comes over and is checking on his status, and within maybe, I think it was 40 seconds of that, you had your first police officer with you. So from the time that those two are standing over him to the next person is a Georgia Southern police officer with body cam running, and nobody else touches Mr. Wright or gets to him after that.
All right, so 30 to 40 seconds it takes. So the police were right there.
They were right. There was actually an officer in the parking lot across at the parking zone right after the shooting happened. I mean, within 10 seconds.
All right. Now, Ms. Harris jumped on him, you said?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is she trying to do CPR, or can you tell what she's doing?
I can't tell what she's doing. She may have been trying to do CPR.
All right. But you can tell that she's got her hands on Mr. Wright's body?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I apologize.
That's all right. I can call worse than that. Right?
It looks like she's trying to like grab like his chest, maybe like this. Like come on, or something. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know what she said, but she's, over his body trying to grab him in his chest area.
Were Mr. Cherry and Mr. Wright friends, cousins?
Yes, sir. They are.
Both.
They're friends. They're not cousins. They're friends, and they live next door to each other.
All right. Did Mr. Cherry ever touch Mr. Wright?
He does.
Shooting.
Yes, sir. He does touch Mr. Wright.
What does he do?
He goes up and like it looks like that he's like checking the stats of him. Like, hey, are you okay?
All right. Now, in the 40 seconds between the time the incident ended and the police got there, did either of these two individuals leave Mr. Wright's vicinity?
Miss Harris, she stays right there. She's on him until the police get there, and right up until the time EMS transport, she's right there. Okay. Mr. Cherry does walk off, and he walks over to a vehicle.
Was he out of the video frame when he walked out?
At no time does he go out of the video frame, but he does walk away from Mr. Wright.
All right, so when he got to this other vehicle, whose vehicle was it?
The vehicle belonged to Kenneth Peacock.
Right. Was Mr. Peacock a witness that you talked to that night?
Yes, not that night, Mr. Peacock. We ended up locating him. So Mr. Peacock was in the crime scene, was the only one that would not exit the crime scene. He was told several times that, hey, you need to get out of the crime scene, you're messing up potential evidence. That was explained to him, but he kept coming back into the crime scene. And the officers on the scene actually arrested Mr. Peacock that night. He was transported to Bullitt County Jail.
Charged with obstruction?
Yes, sir, he was.
What was his problem about leaving the crime scene? Did you ever figure it out?
No, sir. He said we did talk to him. He actually volunteered, came to the police department. Was very cooperative. Talked to us, said, I apologize. That's one of my best friends. I was worried about his status, and he said there's a rush of emotion and adrenaline. He said I was just wasn't thinking clearly.
All right, so Mr. Cherry goes to Mr. Peacock's car. Yes?
Yes.
And how long was he there?
I can't remember exactly. It was minutes, maybe seconds, minutes. It wasn't a very long time, but it was a period of time.
All right, so it could have been as much as a minute or two.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did he get in the vehicle?
Yes, sir, he did.
So when he got into the vehicle, did he close the door behind it?
No, the door stays open.
Did you see what he's doing in the vehicle?
He's sitting in the driver's seat.
Did you see if he put anything under the seat of that vehicle?
No, sir.
Could not see it.
No, sir.
All right.
You can't. The video doesn't show inside of it.
So is it possible he moved a weapon from Mr. Wright's body and put it in the Peacock vehicle?
I don't believe so. It could be a possibility. I don't.
Is there any evidence to support that speculation by the defense counsel?
There is a firearm in the vehicle. There's two firearms in the vehicle. There's a pistol that was underneath the driver's seat of the vehicle, and there's another pistol in the back seat console.
When did you find, I'm sorry, Your Honor, you finished. When did you find those weapons?
So, Detective Holloway, he wrote a search warrant. We actually seized that vehicle. Detective Holloway, in examining the crime scene, sees this vehicle. The car door is still open when he's processing it. Sees what he appears to be the butt of a pistol in the car, and we seal the car. You have to search warrant for it. He searches the vehicle and finds the firearm.
Okay. Did you find a witness? Did any witness tell you that Mr. Wright had a weapon?
No.
Did you ask all the witnesses that question? We did. Did they tell you no, or did they tell you they didn't know?
Mr. Cherry was adamant that he didn't have a weapon. Ms. Harris said that he doesn't carry a weapon. They were the ones that knew the most and knew that he didn't carry a weapon. Ms. Coleman didn't see a gun, didn't think that he had a gun, and Ms. Sheffield didn't know he had a gun.
How did Mr. Wright approach Mr. Boatwright? Did he run up to him? Did he walk up to him fast?
He comes walking across the parking lot. He never actually approaches Boatwright. He walks across the parking lot from the north end of the parking lot over to what would be the driver's side of his vehicle.
Of Mr.
Boatwright's vehicle. Mr. Boatwright is in his vehicle at that time. Miss Sheffield had just stuffed him in the car. She shuts the passenger door, walks around to the driver door of his car, and the mirror moves. It looks like she shuts the door of his car, the driver door of his car too. She's standing just at the driver door of his vehicle when Mr. Boatwright exits quickly and runs around the car it's on the video, it's like 2 seconds in the video from the time he exited the car to the time he's firing shots at Mr. Wright.
The clothing that Mr. Boatwright was wearing in the video is the same clothing you seized?
Yes, sir, it's consistent.
When he turned himself in? Yeah. You mentioned Kenneth Peacock earlier, and you probably said who he was, but I probably was not writing fast enough to keep up with that. Can you please tell me who Mr. Peacock is again?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kenneth Peacock was another person who was on scene at the time. He's depicted in the video wearing a red shirt. Yeah. He's friends with the deceased as well. And his vehicle was parked just south of the where the incident happened. It was a BMW, like a green and color BMW car.
Did he ever approach Mr. Wright's body?
He did walk up to him. He doesn't ever touch him, but he did walk up to him, but it was after the police officer shut it off.
Now, after you contacted Mr. Boatwright, did he immediately come in, or like you asked him to, or did it take him a while to show up?
We were at his mom's house for I think about 30 to 40 minutes before Mr. Boatwright showed up.
Do you know where he was when you called him?
He stated in his interview that he was at his girlfriend's house.
You know where that is?
It's in Midville, Georgia.
You know how far it is from Midville to Twin City?
Probably 30 minutes.
So he came straight on, you think?
Yes, sir.
All right. He cooperated with you, gave you a statement?
Yes, sir. Once he turned himself in, he did.
When you, at some point, have you run his criminal history?
Yes, sir.
Does he have any adult criminal history at all, other than stop sign violations?
Yes, sir. He does.
Were you able to find out anything about him? Was he employed anyplace?
Yes, sir. He is employed, but I don't recall where he said.
Could it possibly been at Walmart distribution?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember how long he's been there?
That's what I don't recall.
I don't know if I can have just a second to ask Mr. Hebe if he's got anything. I think I'm done. Does Mr. Wright have any criminal history?
He had some minor stuff. He had, possession of marijuana charge. 1 second. He has a driving while license suspended or charge. I think that was the only thing he had in his history. And I thought there was a marijuana charge, but that was the only thing he had.
Certainly nothing violent.
No.
All right. Did Mr. Wright go by any other names?
He did. He goes by Doughboy.
Doughboy?
Doughboy.
Okay. Did you check to see? That's right, question. That's all I have.
Just the two guns that were found in the vehicle, did you determine who owned those?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Kenneth Peacock described both of those guns in detail and told me where they would be located in the vehicle. The firearms were also obviously seized on their instant to the crime lab for any comparison to the shell casing we found, and also swab for DNA.
Gee, I'm sorry, did you say the last thing you just said?
Yes, sir. The firearms, we seized the firearms from that vehicle, from the BMW. Yes, sir. They've been sent to the crime lab for comparison to the shell casings found. Yes, sir. And also, they've been, we requested DNA swabs on the firearms as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And just to clarify, when Philip starts approaching, where the shooting would take place, where was the defendant located?
He is in his vehicle on the passenger seat.
And you indicated that the doors to the vehicle were closed.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. The Monica Sheffield shuts the door on Boatwright's vehicle with Boatwright in there. She stuffs him in there, shuts the door.
Did you, during cross, you indicated that he had been at his girlfriend's house prior to turning himself in. Did you have the opportunity to speak with his girlfriend?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you learn anything of significance as it pertains to this case and speaking with her?
Yes, ma'am. She said that he came to her house very upset and said that he had messed up. And she said that he really wouldn't indicate as to how he messed up, but that he was in trouble and he wouldn't see her again. She said that he hugged the kids and held them until he got the call from the family.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing else.
And this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Any argument as to probable cause? Excuse me. Do you have any, are there any other witnesses? It states that they're all going to call one. Do you want to call any witnesses?
We are not calling.
Right here.
No, Your Honor.
Any argument as to probable cause?
State and reserve limits on the evidence.
You heard what we heard, and you'll stand on the evidence.
For crimes, if there's probable cause, it's been committed, the crime is charged, should be found over for injury consideration. Indeed. Evidence or argument as to the issue law.
Your Honor, I have just been instructed to withdraw our request for
So
bond.
you don't have to come to
I'm sorry. My client has just instructed us to withdraw our request for bond, so, we do that at this time.
there's nothing more to do with this case, or report that, is that correct?
That's correct. That's all I have, if I can be excused.
You may, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honor.